Chapter 60, Mafia's True Face. Damian arrived at the shooting range, where he usually practiced his Omega point weapon art, the familiar grounds now serving a completely different purpose today. When he stepped through the entrance, he saw almost 30 students already gathered and waiting for him, including Edrin, Lysa, and Ronan standing prominently at the front of the group. The moment the students noticed Damian's arrival, the atmosphere shifted dramatically. "Boss has arrived." "Good afternoon, boss." "Even though I've reached E- rank now, I still feel completely overwhelmed just standing near boss's presence. I wonder what rank he's currently at. He must be way beyond us by now. Is it just me, or does boss get more handsome with each passing day?" "Stop drooling, girl. That's embarrassing, you." As soon as the assembled students saw Damian enter the shooting range, they all became visibly excited as they greeted him with genuine enthusiasm and respect. It had become genuinely difficult to find Damian around campus these days. He was like a ghost, appearing only when absolutely necessary and vanishing just as quickly. So seeing him in person felt almost like a rare privilege. Damian acknowledged everyone with a short, curt nod, before moving to sit in the instructor's chair, positioned behind the main desk. It was the exact same spot where Professor Salazar had first taught him the fundamental principles of Omega Point all those weeks ago. The symbolism wasn't lost on anyone present. Edrin, Ronan, and Lysa stood directly in front of him like lieutenants awaiting orders, while the other gathered students formed a loose semicircle around them, all eyes focused intently on their leader. The casual chatter died down immediately, replaced by attentive silence. "Good evening, everyone." Damian's voice cut through the quiet like a blade, commanding instant attention. "I sincerely hope all of you have improved yourselves quite significantly over the past few weeks. I know the training has been intense, but that's exactly what we need." He paused, letting his crimson eyes sweep across the assembled faces. "I know almost all of you personally by now. We've trained together many times, shared meals, gotten to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And I think by this point, everyone has realized exactly why I haven't been giving direct orders or missions to anyone during this interim period." Several students nodded slowly, understanding dawning on their faces. "Frankly speaking, all of you were pathetically weak when we first started. You just awakened your abilities and had no real combat experience whatsoever. And honestly, you're all still relatively weak compared to what you need to become." Some students flinched at the blunt assessment, but nobody protested because they knew it was true. But at the very least, almost everyone gathered here today represents the absolute top tier of our organization. I specifically only called those who have advanced to at least E rank for this meeting. You are the elite of the Mafia, the ones I can actually rely on. Pride flickered across several faces at being recognized as elite. And my goal for today is not about practice or casual training. Today marks something far more significant. Damian leaned forward slightly, his presence somehow growing heavier. Today is about the official start of the Mafia's first real mission, our first step into the wider world beyond these academy walls. Excited murmurs rippled through the crowd, students exchanging glances filled with anticipation and nervousness. Damian raised his hand, and silence fell immediately. "But before we begin, since this marks the official operational launch of our organization, I need to tell you the complete truth about what kind of organization the Mafia really is, what we're actually going to become." The atmosphere shifted again, becoming charged with tension and curiosity. Everyone leaned forward unconsciously, hanging on his every word. They'd always wondered what exactly the Mafia truly represented beyond just protection and mutual support. Now it seemed Damian would finally reveal the full picture. "One simple question for all of you. What does any organization need to become genuinely stable and permanently established? Money and people. Edrin replied almost instantly, his sharp mind already working ahead. He was already widely considered one of the most intelligent students in the entire current first-year batch, possessing not just book smarts but genuine strategic thinking ability. He also had a rare innate tactical type skill that made him exceptional at planning and coordination. That was precisely why Damian had already quietly handed over the day-to-day management and organizational duties of the Mafia to him weeks ago. Absolutely correct, Edrin. We already have loyal people, talented people who believe in our cause, but what we desperately lack is money, substantial financial resources. Damian's expression darkened slightly. And the club's committee will never, ever allocate us any official funding. They'd rather burn their budget than give us a single coin. So I don't even want to waste time bothering with those pathetic bureaucrats. Everyone's faces became noticeably ugly at the mere mention of the club's committee. Indeed, it was precisely that committee which controlled all official funding allocation for student organizations. And their head, Gareth Blackwood, who'd violently clashed with Damian previously, would absolutely never give them a single penny no matter what. The political reality was crystal clear. So that leaves us with only one viable option for acquiring the resources we need. Damian's voice dropped lower, more dangerous. We acquire it ourselves, through our own means, our own methods, our own power. He stood up slowly, his tall frame casting a long shadow across the assembled students. And the method we'll use to acquire money is actually quite simple. In fact, it will become the entire foundation of what the Mafia truly is. This is the real nature of our organization, stripped of all the noble rhetoric about justice and equality. The tension ratcheted higher, students held their breath. We will start by collecting protection money from legitimate businesses operating in Tranquil City. We will drive away any underworld gangs that are already extorting money from these establishments through violence and intimidation. And then we will take a reasonable share of profit from their businesses as payment for our protection services. Jacques silence. Not a fixed amount that might bankrupt smaller operations, but an actual percentage share of their profits. So even small family businesses can survive and prosper under our protection. We'll scale our fees based on their success. Edrin, Lysa, and Ronan exchanged genuinely surprised looks with each other. They clearly had not expected that their student organization would extend its reach and operations so far beyond the academy campus, into the actual criminal underworld of the city. This was far more serious than they'd imagined. But boss, a visibly anxious-looking, somewhat chubby student spoke up in a trembling, low voice. His name was Xavier Wells. He belonged to Section D and was actually that section's top-ranked student despite his nervous disposition. The only reason he'd ended up in Section D instead of a higher tier was because, during his entrance examination, he'd literally fainted halfway through just from looking at the intimidating question paper. The only reason he'd managed to rank decently at all was due to his natural talent being a respectable A rank. He was chronically anxious and painfully timid by nature. But ever since he'd started regularly interacting with Damian and the other Mafia core members, he'd been gradually gaining small amounts of confidence. But clearly, he wasn't confident enough yet to feel comfortable about fighting actual criminals in the dangerous underworld. We're just students, boss. Underworld gangs are absolutely ruthless. They kill people over pocket change. They have no morals, no hesitation. How will we possibly manage to actually protect these businesses from professional criminals? His voice cracked slightly with fear. Even the city police deliberately let the underworld handle their own business among themselves. They don't interfere because it's too dangerous, too complicated. What chance do we have? And it wasn't only Xavier feeling this way. Many others present were also clearly experiencing deep anxiety, their faces pale and uncertain. They were just students, after all, most of them only 15 years old. For their entire lives up until now, they'd never even seriously thought about getting into violent confrontations with actual hardened criminals who killed for a living. This was completely outside their experience or comfort zone. Damian looked at all of them carefully, reading their fears and doubts written plainly across their faces. Then he stood up and walked closer to the assembled group, his presence somehow becoming even more commanding. We will absolutely be able to provide genuine protection to our clients. I guarantee it. His voice was cold, certain, utterly confident. We just need to go out there into the city, find the gangs currently harassing our future clients, and then kill them if they refuse to listen to reason and back off. Complete silence. Deathly, suffocating silence spread instantly among the students present as many faces turned even paler, the blood draining from their features. They'd never imagined they would be casually discussing killing people today, talking about taking human lives as if it were a normal business decision. Even Edrin, Lysa, and Ronan became noticeably pale, their earlier confidence shaken. Damian's expression didn't change at all. His voice remained perfectly calm and matter-of-fact. What do you all think we're actually doing here at this academy? Why do you think the Federation invests so much money and resources into training awakeners? He let the question hang in the air for a moment. I'll give you the direct, honest answer since nobody else will. We are being systematically trained and conditioned to become efficient killing machines to be deployed on battlefields. All of us will eventually be thrown into combat against the monsters that come through the portals. That's our purpose. That's our destiny. His crimson eyes swept across every face. Do you genuinely think your enemies will care even slightly if you're inexperienced, or young, or innocent? Do you think monsters will hesitate to tear you apart because you're scared? Several students swallowed hard, unable to meet his gaze. Actually, you know what? Forget all that motivational speech nonsense. I don't have time or interest in trying to inspire or convince any of you. Damian's voice turned harsh, cutting. But realize one thing with absolute clarity. My Mafia will be involved in every type of dealing that exists in the underworld. Every single one. We will start with simple protection money from normal businesses, yes. Then we will expand to nightclubs, entertainment venues, larger companies, powerful organizations, and eventually whoever needs our protection and can afford to pay for it. He crossed his arms. Our operational principle is brutally simple. Take the money, get the job done perfectly. And the money we take will not be exploitative extortion like common thugs. Just a fair share of profit scaled appropriately. Doesn't matter if the business is big or small, if the owner is poor or wealthy. We protect everyone equally who pays. His expression hardened further. And I absolutely do not need or want anyone who is too scared to get their hands dirty in my organization. You're all far too sheltered and immature to realize that the real world outside these safe academy walls is not remotely as simple or kind as you imagine. Damian began packing slowly, his words picking up intensity. Why do you think gangs and the criminal underworld exist in the first place? Why does the supposedly righteous police force do essentially nothing to stop them? Why is the entire Federation system so systematically biased against commoners in every possible way? He stopped and turned to face them directly. Why aren't we even given the basic permission to awaken our abilities without entering an officially sanctioned academy? Think about that. Why even have such a restrictive rule? What possible justification exists for it? Several students frowned, clearly never having questioned this before. The answer is devastatingly simple once you open your eyes to see it. There is no real justice in this federation. None. All the people who reach positions of real power only care about protecting and advancing their own benefits and the benefits of their families and factions. Nobles deliberately create and maintain social constructs specifically designed for their exclusive benefit. His voice grew colder, more cutting. If you want to acquire something meaningful in this world, you have to seize it with power. Raw, undeniable power. Nothing worthwhile is ever given freely, and absolutely nobody will show mercy to you or your loved ones when their interests conflict with yours. Damian's eyes blazed with conviction. Everything I'm saying sounds extreme, right? Sounds like paranoid exaggeration. Well, this information was provided to me directly by Officer Brian of the SFD himself during our therapy sessions. A good man, an honest man who personally watched helplessly as his closest friends were systematically robbed of their wives, their sisters, their dignity, their self-respect, their freedom, everything that made their lives worth living. Shocked gasps rippled through the crowd. And if even an official officer of the SFD, a trained professional who dedicated his life to justice, a commoner just like all of you, is completely helpless against the system. Damian let that sink in before delivering the killing blow. Do you honestly think you're somehow special, that you'll be different, that your talent or hard work will protect you? He shook his head slowly. At the end of the day, you have to survive in a society fundamentally ruled by power and power alone. You cannot escape this matrix no matter how hard you try. The system is designed to keep you trapped, weak, dependent. His voice dropped to an intense whisper that somehow carried to every ear. And when you decide today not to step out of your comfortable delusions, when you choose to run away from this opportunity because you're scared of getting your hands dirty. His crimson eyes seemed to glow. Don't you dare regret it later. Don't come crying when that inevitable day arrives where all you can think about is, I wish I had more power. I wish I had been braver. I wish I had joined Damian that day instead of refusing like a delusional, pathetic coward. Silence. Absolute, crushing, deathly silence spread across the entire shooting range. Not a single person moved or breathed loudly. Everyone's faces reflected various shades of fear, uncertainty, and dawning realization by the time Damian finished speaking. Some looked terrified. Others looked angry. But most looked conflicted, their worldviews cracking under the weight of his words. Damian stood there calmly, waiting to see if his weeks of hard work with this group was a success or not. Will they run? Or will they stay? There were many buses that traveled between Tranquil City and the Academy daily. They ran 24/7, since countless people traveled between the two destinations every day: students, staff, workers, and various other civilians. Inside a futuristic-looking bus with sleek chrome panels and holographic displays, the Mafia sat in tense silence as they waited to reach Tranquil City to carry out their first real mission. Yes, the Mafia was so pathetically poor that they could only afford basic bus tickets for now. In the coming few years, people wouldn't believe that the infamous Mafia carried out their first criminal operation by traveling on public transportation like common civilians. The Academy had their own private buses designated for official club activities. But in order to use them, students had to get explicit permission from the student council first, which, in their case, would never happen in a million years. Sigh, we really are broke. I never really considered earning money before since my family provided everything, but the Mafia desperately needs substantial funds to function properly. Damian sighed internally as he stood near the front of the bus, looking back at his newbie Mafia members seated nervously in their seats. He did have money in his personal account from his family's allowance, but he absolutely refused to use his family's hard-earned money for running the Mafia's operations. This had to be built from the ground up with their own hands. I genuinely never thought all of them would actually agree to come. Yes, every single member that he'd gathered and spoken to in the shooting range earlier had agreed to come along for this dangerous mission, each for their own personal reasons. Not one person had decided to leave or back out. And Damian felt genuinely glad that his 2 months of carefully building bonds and trust with them hadn't been wasted effort. Looking at the obviously tense expressions on the faces of everyone gathered, he decided to try lightening the oppressive mood. Relax, everyone. I'm not sending you all to your deaths on our very first mission. His calm voice cut through the nervous silence. Since this is our first operation, the target I've chosen is also something you can realistically handle without too much difficulty. And in case you still don't manage to hold up under pressure. He smiled slightly. You have me. Hearing him say that with such casual confidence, many students visibly relaxed, their shoulders dropping slightly. That's right, don't worry so much, you guys. Ronan's loud, enthusiastic voice boomed through the bus. Didn't you all see how Boss absolutely demolished Mara 2 months back? Beat a C-rank third-year half to death with his bare fists. And it's been 2 whole months since that incident. Boss will surely be super powerful by now. Several students nodded, their confidence growing. Damian smiled genuinely before his gaze shifted to a particularly calm-looking girl seated in the back of the bus. The girl's name was Ariana Sterling. She had simple black hair and black eyes, the most common coloring for people in this world, and everything about her appearance seemed completely average and unremarkable. But she possessed one of the absolute rarest, innate skills Damian had ever encountered. She was born with a spatial manipulation skill. Yes, while everyone else would eventually have to purchase expensive storage rings to carry their equipment, or spend years trying to somehow learn an incredibly rare space-type skill through brutal training. This girl had been born with the natural ability to store objects in a personal dimensional space. Her storage capacity depended directly on her aura core rank, which was currently only E-, so the space wasn't particularly large at the moment. But it would grow with her. Right now, she was carrying everyone's weapons inside her spatial storage, including Damian's distinctive battle axe. Ariana's. Damian's voice drew her attention. You'll stay directly by my side when we engage our target. Don't stray from me. Okay. Ariana replied with that same calm, unruffled expression on her face, as if they were discussing tomorrow's weather rather than a dangerous criminal operation. She was also a student from Section A, thanks to her exceptionally rare innate skill being recognized during the entrance examinations. Everyone else in the bus looked at her with openly envious eyes. She was probably going to be the safest person among them all tonight. Tranquil City was fundamentally divided into 3 distinct regions, each with its own character and level of danger. The Quinton skyscraper that Damian had spectacularly obliterated previously was located in the core region, where Old Man Mike and his mysterious friends quietly operated their shadowy business dealings. Surrounding the core region was the inner region, where most of the city's wealthy, influential residents lived in relative safety and luxury. And then there was the outer region. It was the most chaotic, violent area of the entire city, a place even the regular police deliberately avoided entering unless absolutely forced to respond. Dozens of small gangs were constantly engaged in brutal territory wars here, fighting over scraps of control and influence. And the outer region was precisely where Damian planned to begin the Mafia's rise to power. He'd obtained all this detailed geographical and political information from Old Man Mike during their previous conversations. And his chosen target was one of the bigger, more established gangs controlling this dangerous region. The Serpent Gang. This particular criminal organization controlled approximately 10% of the entire outer region's territory and ruthlessly extorted protection, money from everyone who had businesses operating within their claimed area. But there was another specific reason why Damian had chosen this gang as their first target. They ran one of the largest drug distribution rings in the entire city. And Damian absolutely despised this type of business, even back in his past life. He didn't particularly mind alcohol or cigarettes. Those were vices, sure, but relatively harmless in moderation. But hard drugs, that was where he drew his line in the sand. He wasn't a hero by any stretch of imagination. But he had principles. And some things were just unacceptable. The bus finally stopped at the border between the inner and outer regions, as far as public transportation was willing to go. The moment Damian and his 30 Mafia members stepped off, the atmosphere changed dramatically. The clean, well-maintained streets of the inner region gave way to cracked pavement, flickering streetlights, and buildings covered in graffiti. The air itself felt heavier, more oppressive. "Everyone gather up." Damian's voice was calm but commanding. The 30 students quickly formed a loose circle around him, their hands unconsciously moving to where their weapons would normally be. Ariana stepped forward silently and began distributing weapons from her spatial storage. Ronan received nothing. He fought with his fists and innate brute strength. Lysa was handed an elegant compound bow with a quiver of arrows. Edrin received twin short sword that gleamed under the dim streetlights. Xavier nervously accepted a simple spear, his hands trembling slightly. Other students received their chosen weapons: daggers, shields, staffs, chains, even a few guns for those who'd trained in marksmanship. Damian left his axe in Ariana's storage for now. He wouldn't need it yet. Listen carefully. Damian's crimson eye swept across every face. Edrin will lead you through the initial engagement. You'll start from that street. He pointed toward a narrow alley lined with small businesses, all of them clearly struggling under the weight of extortion. Serpent Gang members patrol that area regularly. You'll encounter resistance. You'll face people who have killed before, who won't hesitate like you will. Several students swallowed hard. Some of you might get hurt. Some of you might even nearly die. Damian's voice was brutally honest. But I'll be watching. I won't let any of you actually die on your first mission. That would be a waste of my investment in your training. He looked directly at Edrin. Show me what you've learned these past 2 months. Show me if my time was wasted or well spent. Edrin adjusted his glasses, his tactical mind already working. Understood, boss. The narrow street was eerily quiet except for the distant sound of music bleeding from a rundown bar. Edrin led the group forward, his twin short swords still sheathed at his sides. Behind him, 29 students moved with varying degrees of confidence and fear. Lysa had an arrow made of aura knocked but not drawn, her innate sensory skill scanning everything around them. Ronan cracked his knuckles, the sound unnaturally loud in the tense silence. Xavier gripped his spear so tightly his knuckles had turned white. There. Lysa's whisper cut through the tension. 6 of them around the corner. 3 have guns, 2 have knives, 1 has. I think it's a chain. Edrin's mind worked rapidly. Ronan, you take point with me. Draw their attention. Lysa, find high ground and pick off the ones with guns first. Everyone else stay behind us and... Well. A rough voice interrupted as 6 figures stepped out from the shadows, blocking the street ahead. Look what we got here, a bunch of kids playing dress-up. The speaker was a scarred man in his late 20s, a wicked-looking curved knife spinning lazily in his hand. His eyes were cold, empty, the eyes of someone who'd killed before and enjoyed it. Behind him, his companions spread out, cutting off easy escape routes. "This is serpent territory, kiddies. You lost or just stupid." Edrin stepped forward, keeping his voice steady despite the fear clawing at his chest. "We're here to deliver a message. The Serpent Gang is finished in this district. Leave now and you won't get hurt." Silence. Then laughter, cruel, mocking laughter that echoed off the grimy walls. "Oh man, that's rich. You hear that, boys? These bobbies think they can." Edrin moved. His tactical skill activated, and suddenly he could see it, the optimal strike path, the enemy's weak points, the precise timing needed. His twin swords flashed out of their sheaths. Clang! Steel met steel as the scarred man barely blocked, his eyes widening in genuine surprise. "Shit, they're actually..." "Now!" At Edrin's shout, chaos erupted. Ronan charged forward like a bull, his massive frame colliding with two gang members. His fist, enhanced by his innate brute strength skill, slammed into the first man's gut. The crack of ribs breaking was audible. "AGHH." The gang member flew backward, crashing through a rotting wooden fence. Lysa had already scrambled up a fire escape, her bow drawn. Thwip! Her first arrow took one of the gunmen through the shoulder before he could aim. THWIP. The second arrow missed as the man dove for cover, raising his pistol. Bang! The gunshot exploded through the street. A Mafia student screamed as the bullet tore through his leg, sending him crashing to the ground. MARCUS. Everything changed in that instant. The students had trained, yes. They'd sparred, practiced, improved their skills over 2 months. But this was different. This was real. The second gunman opened fire, forcing the students to scatter like frightened animals. The difference between academy sparring and actual life-or-death combat became horrifyingly clear. "They're just kids, rush them." The scarred man drove Edrin back with a vicious series of slashes, his knife work speaking of years of street fighting experience. Edrin blocked desperately, his tactical skills showing him what to do, but his body wasn't fast enough to execute perfectly. A blade slipped through. Pain exploded across his ribs as the knife opened a long, shallow cut. Gah! Edrin. Ronan tried to help, but he was dealing with his own problems. 3 more serpent members had appeared from a side alley, and even his monstrous strength couldn't handle them all at once. A chain whipped around his ankle. He went down hard. "Big guy ain't so tough now, huh?" A boot slammed into his face. Then another. Blood sprayed from Ronan's mouth. Xavier stood frozen, his spear trembling in his shaking hands as a gang member stalked toward him with a jagged knife. Please, I don't." "Shut up and die, kid." The knife thrust forward. Bang! The gang member's head snapped back, a perfect hole appearing in his forehead. He collapsed like a puppet with cut strings. Xavier stared in shock, then looked up. On a distant rooftop, barely visible in the darkness, Damian lowered his gun. His crimson eyes were cold, calculating, watching everything. "Boss is watching," Lysa shouted from her perch. "He won't let us die, fight back." Something shifted in the students. They'd been holding back, terrified of actually hurting someone, of crossing that line. But these men weren't holding back at all. These men wanted them dead. A girl with twin daggers, her name was Selene, dodged a knife slash and countered with a viciousness that surprised even herself. Her blade opened the man's throat. Not deep enough to kill, but deep enough to send him stumbling back, clutching his neck, choking on blood. Holy shit, she actually... Another student, A boy named Marcus, wielding a short spear, drove his weapon into a gang member's shoulder with desperate strength. The man screamed. Marcus twisted the spear, screamed louder. The sound of backup approaching echoed through the alleys, shouts, running footsteps, the distinct click of more guns being loaded. Shit, they called for reinforcements. How many? A lot. At least 15 more Serpent gang members poured into the street from 3 different directions, cutting off retreat completely. This wasn't a small patrol anymore. This was a war. Edrin's tactical mind raced, trying to find a solution, a way out. But there wasn't one. They were outnumbered, outgunned, and most of his people were already injured. They were going to die here. Fall back to the wall, focus on defense. The students scrambled to obey, pressing their backs against the building behind them. The Serpent members advanced slowly, confidently, knowing they had already won. You kids got guts, I'll give you that, but guts don't mean shit when you're dead. The scarred leader raised his knife. And then Xavier started laughing. It was a high, slightly hysterical sound that made everyone pause. You okay, Zav? Ronan muttered, wiping blood from his split lip. I'm gonna die anyway, right? Xavier's voice was shaking, tears streaming down his chubby face. If I run, I die. If I fight, I probably die, so I might as well. His grip tightened on his spear. Might as well take you, FUCKRS, with me. He charged as aura filled his spear. With no skill or tactics at all. Just pure, terror-driven desperation. His spear caught a gang member completely off guard, punching through the man's stomach. Xavier didn't stop. He ripped the spear free and stabbed again. And again. And again. Blood sprayed across his face, his uniform, his hands. He was crying and screaming and stabbing all at once. Die, die, die. I don't want to die, so you die instead. The gang members actually backed up, unnerved by the chubby kid who transformed into a sobbing, blood-soaked whirlwind of violence. Damian watched from his rooftop perch, one eyebrow raised. Well, that's unexpected. Edrin stared at Xavier with an expression caught between surprise and respect. Even Ronan put on a strange expression on his face. But it worked. Seeing Xavier's desperate, brutal assault, seeing that even the most timid among them was willing to kill rather than die, something broke in the other students. The fear didn't disappear, but it transformed into something else. Something darker. Something more dangerous. Seleni's daggers found another throat. This time she cut deeper. A boy with a staff broke a gang member's kneecap, then his skull when he went down. Lysa's arrows stopped aiming for shoulders and started aiming for hearts. The Mafia stopped fighting like students and started fighting like criminals. The Serpent reinforcements spread out, their bodies already glowing with visible aura as they prepared to crush these upstart students. A gang member's fist blazed with orange aura as he swung at a Mafia student's head. Crack! The boy's crude aura shield shattered like glass. His head snapped to the side, blood and teeth flying. He crumpled. DRK. This wasn't academy sparring where people pulled their punches. This was a life and death fight. Edrin's tactical skill flared to life, his mind processing everything at impossible speeds. He could see the flow of battle, the weak points, the opportunities. But seeing and executing were two different things. A Serpent member, E+ rank by the feel of his aura, came at him with an aura-coated machete that glowed sickly green. Edrin's twin swords blazed with his own blue aura as he blocked. Clang! The impact sent shockwaves up his arms. His feet slid backward across the cracked pavement. He's stronger, more experienced, but I can see his pattern. Another slash. Edrin ducked, his tactical mind showing him the exact angle to dodge. His counterstrike caught the man across the ribs, aura-enhanced blade biting deep. The gang member screamed. Blood sprayed hot across Edrin's face. The man staggered back, clutching the wound, aura flickering as he tried to stop the bleeding, but he still died. Edrin stared at the blood on his swords. His stomach lurched. He turned and vomited violently, his breakfast splattering across the pavement. Edrin behind you. He spun just in time to see another attacker. Bang! The gang member's knee exploded in a spray of blood and bone. On the rooftop, Damian stood with his gun pointed, his other hand casually tucked in his pocket. The man collapsed screaming. Edrin wiped his mouth, forcing himself to focus. No time to be weak. They're counting on me. Lysa, find a higher ground now. Ronan with me. Everyone else surround them. His voice cracked but held authority. Lysa had already found a better vantage point, the roof of a 2-story building overlooking the entire street. Her sensory skill was working overtime, tracking every enemy, every movement, every threat. She drew her bow, condensing her aura into the string. No physical arrow. Pure aura. The technique she'd spent 2 months mastering under Professor Serafina's brutal training. Focus, breathe, see the target. THWIP. The blue aura arrow shrieked through the air and punched through a gang member's shoulder, the aura detonating on impact. He screamed, his entire arm going limp. THWIP, THWIP. 2 more shots, 2 more hits. But there were so many of them. And then she saw it, a window on the 2nd floor of the building across the street. 3 gang members with rifles, taking aim at her friends below. No. One of them fired. Bang. A Mafia student, a quiet girl named Emily who always helped Lysa with her theory classes, jerked violently as the bullet tore through her stomach. She fell. Didn't get back up. Something snapped in Lysa. Her aura exploded outward, brown mixing with gold, far more than she'd ever channeled before. She drew the bow back, pouring everything she had into a single arrow. Piercing gale. Her weapon art activated. The aura arrow was massive, nearly a meter long, spinning like a drill. Boom! It didn't just hit the window. It obliterated the entire section of wall. Bricks, glass, wood, everything exploded inward in a devastating blast. The 3 gang members inside didn't even have time to scream. The arrow detonated. When the dust cleared, there was just a hole and red mist. Lysa stared at what she'd done, at what was left of 3 human beings. Her bow slipped from trembling fingers. She turned and vomited over the edge of the roof, her body shaking violently. I killed them, I killed them, I killed. Lysa. Ronan's bellows snapped her back. We need you, don't stop now. She wiped her mouth, tears streaming down her face, and picked up her bow. They needed her. She could break down later. Ronan was a hurricane of violence. His brown aura blazed around his massive frame as he activated his innate skill. Titan's Fury. His already impressive height shot up another foot. Muscles bulged, veins standing out like cables. His dark bronze skin seemed to glow with inner fire. Come on then, you bastards. A gang member swung a metal bat, crackling with yellow aura. Ronan caught it with his bare hand. Crunch! His fingers crushed the metal like paper. My turn. His aura-coated fist slammed into the man's face. The gang member's head snapped back at an unnatural angle. His body flew backward, crashing through a storefront window. He didn't get up. Ronan didn't stop. Another enemy, another punch. This one caved in ribs. The cracking sound was sickening. A knife scraped across his back. his aura-hardened skin deflecting most of the damage but still leaving a shallow cut. He roared and spun, backhanding the attacker. The man's jaw shattered. Blood and broken teeth sprayed across the pavement. But even Ronan's monstrous strength had limits. A gang member, E-rank, stronger than the others, slammed a chain wrapped in dense green aura into Ronan's knee. Crack. ARGH. Ronan staggered, his leg buckling. The same man followed up with a crushing blow to his ribs. Even through his aura defense, Ronan felt bones crack. He went down on one knee, coughing blood. Gotcha, big man. 3 more gang members rushed in, seeing their chance. Bang, bang, bang. 3 headshots in rapid succession. 3 bodies dropped. Damian stood on a fire escape now, closer to the action, his gun still running non-stop to help them. His crimson eyes met Ronan's for just a moment. Get up. The unspoken command was clear. Ronan spat blood and forced himself to stand, ignoring the screaming pain in his knee. Thanks, boss. He threw himself back into the fight. Xavier was still crying, still screaming, still stabbing. I'm sorry, please just die so I don't have to. His spear, coated in his shaking aura, punched through another gang member's leg. The man collapsed. Xavier stabbed him again. And again. And again. Zav, he's already down, someone shouted. I know, but what if he gets back up? He kept stabbing. Blood was everywhere, on his face, his clothes pooling around his feet. A gang member tried to flank him. Xavier spun, tears and snot streaming down his face, and threw his spear in pure panic. It flew wild, and somehow buried itself in the man's throat. Pure luck. Xavier stared, then immediately vomited, adding to the mess at his feet. Oh God, I killed him, I actually. Another enemy charged at him while he was distracted. Xavier's eyes went wide with terror. He grabbed the nearest thing he could find, a broken brick, and hurled it. The brick, infused with his panicked aura burst, hit the man square in the face. His nose exploded in a spray of blood. My face. I'm sorry, Xavier shrieked, grabbing his spear back and stabbing wildly. Stop attacking me and I'll stop stabbing you. Despite the chaos, despite the blood and death and screaming. Someone laughed. Then another. Did he just apologize while stabbing someone? Zav's fucking insane. I love it, kill Zav. The laughter was hysterical, tinged with madness, but it spread. These kids were breaking. But they were breaking forward, not backward. The student named Marcus caught a knife to the shoulder, the aura-coated blade punching through his hasty defense. He screamed. Selene, the girl with twin daggers, had one of her hands dislocated when a staff hit her. She stared at her ruined hand in shock, unable to process what she was seeing. Another boy, his name was Rio, took a bat to the skull. His aura shield held just enough to keep his head from splitting open, but he still went down hard, blood pouring from a massive gash. The injured were piling up. But so were the bodies. The Mafia students were learning, adapting, becoming more vicious with every second. And more Serpent Gang members kept arriving. How many of these fuckers are there? Ronan bellowed, his titan form starting to flicker as his aura reserves ran low. Too many, Edrin shouted back, his tactical mind screaming warnings. We need to. A new voice cut through the chaos. Older, harder, infinitely more dangerous. Well, look at this mess. Everyone froze. A man stepped into the street, and the very air seemed to grow heavier. D-rank. His aura was dense, controlled, absolutely suffocating compared to the E+ rankers. He cracked his knuckles, each one glowing with condensed orange aura. You brats killed a lot of my people. That's gonna cost you. Behind him, 5 more E-plus rank gang members emerged from the shadows. The students' faces went pale. They couldn't handle this. They were about to die. And then, bang! The D-rank man's head rocked to the side as an orange-fused bullet grazed his temple, leaving a bleeding furrow. He touched the wound, staring at the blood on his fingers in shock. What the? He looked up. Damian stood on the roof edge, his gun aimed casually, its silver engravings shining in the moonlight. His crimson hair stirred in the wind. His eyes were cold, ancient, terrifying. You're in my way. His voice carried despite the distance. Move or die, your choice. The D-rank gang member's face twisted with rage. You little shit, I'll. Bang! This time the bullet hit his shoulder, spinning him around. Damian's voice was perfectly calm. That's strike 2. There won't be a 3. D-rank gang member clutched his bleeding shoulder, his face twisted with rage and pain. You think one gun makes you hot shit, kid? I'll rip your fucking. Bang! The bullet took him through the knee. He collapsed screaming. Damian lowered his gun, his expression utterly bored. I said move, you chose death. He aimed for the headshot. Suddenly, the entire street exploded with aura. It was very dense and suffocating. Every student staggered under the weight of it, their own aura flickering weakly in comparison. Even Ronan's titan form wavered. What the hell is this pressure? From the far end of the street, a figure walked calmly through the chaos. Tall, lean, moving with the casual confidence of someone who knew he was the most dangerous thing in the area. His aura was dark purple, thick enough to be visible even without trying. C+ rank. The gang members immediately parted for him, their faces showing relief mixed with fear. Boss Kale. Thank God Boss is here. The man Kale surveyed the carnage with cold eyes, bodies everywhere, his people dead or dying, blood coating the pavement. And a bunch of fucking students responsible for it all. Well, his voice was quiet but carried effortlessly. You kids have some balls, I'll give you that, coming into my territory, killing my people. He cracked his neck, the sound unnaturally loud. But balls don't mean shit when you're dead. He raised one hand. Dozens more gang members poured out of buildings, alleyways, hidden positions. Edrin's face went pale as his tactical skill processed the new threat assessment. They were completely surrounded now, at least 60 fresh enemies, and this man, this leader, was on a completely different level. Fall back to. There's nowhere to fall back to, kid. Kale smiled, and it was the smile of a predator who'd already won. You walked right into my web, now you die in it. He gestured casually. Kill them, all of them. The gang members surged forward as one, a wave of violence and aura. The Mafia students tried to form defensive positions, but they were exhausted, injured, running on fumes. A student named Leo raised his shield, crackling with his aura, to block a machete strike. The blade, infused with far superior aura, sheared straight through. The machete buried itself in Leo's collarbone. AGHH. He went down screaming. Selene, still clutching her ruined hand, tried to fight with one dagger. A chain wrapped around her neck from behind. She gasped, choking, her face turning red as the aura-coated chain tightened. Bang! The gang member holding the chain jerked backward, a hole in his chest. Selene collapsed, gasping for air. Damian fired again from his rooftop position. And again. And again. Each shot perfectly placed, each bullet infused with just enough aura to punch through defenses. He was keeping them alive through sheer marksmanship, constantly using Omega Point to strengthen the bullets. but even he couldn't be everywhere at once. Ronan's Titan form finally flickered out, his aura completely spent. He stumbled, suddenly much smaller, vulnerable. A bat crashed into his already injured ribs. Crack. Ronan. Lysa fired arrow after aura arrow, but her hands were shaking, her aim suffering. She was running on empty too. Edrin's tactical mind was screaming at him, "We're going to die. We're actually going to die here. I don't think even boss can handle a C+ rank enemy." His swords felt impossibly heavy. Xavier was still somehow stabbing people while crying, but even his hysterical energy was flagging. I can't keep, please just." They were breaking. Completely. And then Kale moved. He just walked toward Edrin with terrifying casualness. "You're the smart one giving orders, right? I can tell." Kale's fist, coated in dense purple aura, lashed out faster than Edrin could track. Boom! Edrin's hastily raised swords shattered like glass. The punch caught him square in the chest. He flew backward, crashing through a wooden crate. Blood exploded from his mouth. He tried to stand, but he couldn't. His ribs were broken, lungs screaming. "Is this how I die?" Kale stood over him, raising his fist for the killing blow. Bang, bang, bang. 3 shots. Kale's hand blurred, his aura flaring. He caught the bullets. Actually caught them midair with his bare hand, the aura-infused rounds crumpling harmlessly against his superior defense. He looked up at Damian's position and smiled. "Nice try, kid, but you're gonna need more than a..." A massive aura shield materialized in front of Kale. No, not in front of him. Around the entire street. Translucent barriers of golden aura rose from the ground, forming walls that blocked every escape route, every line of sight to Damian's position. "What the..." From behind the shield, another voice rang out. "Kale, you're being sloppy. Let me handle the sniper." A second figure emerged from the Serpent Gang headquarters, building at the end of the street. Shorter than Kale, stockier, his aura was golden, dense, and absolutely suffocating. C+ rank. His name was Marco the Wall Chen, and his specialty was shield-type defensive arts. He raised both hands, and more aura shields materialized, layered, overlapping, creating an impenetrable barrier between Damian and his targets. Damian fired. Bang! The bullet struck the shield and stopped dead, the aura absorbing the impact completely. Bang, bang. 2 more shots, same result. The wall smiled. "Sorry, kid, but that toy won't work on me. My shields can stop a fucking tank round." He gestured, and the shields began to move, actively hunting for Damian's position. Kale laughed. "See, this is why Marco is second in command. Now where were we?" He turned back to Edrin, raising his fist. On the rooftop, Damian watched his shots bounce harmlessly off the golden shields. He lowered his gun. A shield specialist, annoying. His crimson eyes swept across the battlefield below. His Mafia was on the verge of complete collapse, with most of them injured and exhausted, as they were completely surrounded. They'd fought well, better than he'd expected for their first real combat. But this was beyond them now. Time to stop playing support. "Ariana." His voice was calm despite the chaos. Down in the street near him, pressed against a wall for safety, Ariana's eyes widened. She could hear him somehow, his voice cutting through the noise. "My ex now." She didn't hesitate. Her spatial storage activated, and Damian's weapon materialized in his hand. 60 centimeters of pure black obsidian handle. 2 crescent blades, one at the top, one at the base. The primary blade featuring that distinctive circular hole that made the weapon whistle when swung. Dark crimson aura immediately flooded into the weapon, making it pulse like a living heartbeat. The students below saw it and froze. Boss has an axe. Since when does he use melee weapons? I thought he only used guns. Even Edrin, through his pain, stared up in shock. Damian stood at the roof's edge, his crimson hair whipping in the wind, his axe held casually in one hand. The wall's shields were still hunting for him, closing in. He smiled. Not his usual cold expression. A genuine, excited, slightly unhinged smile. Finally, he jumped. Not toward the ground. Across. To the next building, his legs coiled, aura exploding from his feet. He launched himself through the air in a perfect arc, clearing the 30-foot gap easily. The wall's shields tried to intercept, but he was too fast. He landed on the next rooftop, already moving. Another jump, another building. Closer. Closer. The gang members below were tracking his movement now, pointing, shouting. He's coming, that guy is coming. Fuck, someone stop him. Damian hit the third building and didn't stop. This time he jumped down, straight toward the center of the gang's formation. His axe raised high overhead, both hands gripping the obsidian handle. Dark crimson aura erupted around him like flames, so thick it was almost solid. The gang members raised their weapons, their auras flaring. Too slow. Boom. Damian landed like a meteor. His axe, loaded with catastrophic amounts of aura, came down in a perfect vertical strike. The blade met a gang member's upraised guard and split him in half. Vertically. From head to groin. The two halves of the body fell in opposite directions, blood spraying in a wide arc. Complete silence. Everyone froze. Damian stood in the center of the carnage, blood coating his face and clothes. He looked up slowly. His crimson eyes found Kale. And he smiled. It was a very wide, manic and terrifying smile. My turn. Silence. Complete, suffocating silence spread across the blood-soaked street. The gang member's bisected corpse lay in a spreading pool of red steam rising from the exposed organs. Damian stood over it, his axe dripping, that insane smile still plastered across his face. His dark crimson aura pulsed around him like a living thing. What the fuck? He just with one hit. That's impossible. The gang members backed up instinctively, their earlier confidence evaporating. Kale's face twisted with rage. One lucky shot, he caught someone off guard, that's all. Rush him. 5 gang members charged at once, their auras flaring, weapons raised. Damian's smile widened. Sonic blink. He vanished. Not teleportation, but pure speed. His movement skill activated, and suddenly he was just gone from where he stood. The 5 attackers' weapons hit empty air. Where did he? Damian reappeared behind the closest one. His axe whistled through the air, that circular hole creating an eerie sound. One strike. The blade took the man's head clean off, the aura-enhanced edge meeting 0 resistance. The body stood for a second before collapsing, blood fountaining from the neck stump. Sonic blink. He was gone again, and reappeared beside another gang member. The axe came horizontal this time, catching the man at the waist. Shunk. Cut clean through, top half sliding off the bottom. The screaming started. Fuck, where is he? I can't track him. Sonic blink. This time Damian brought the axe down vertically through a man's shoulder, splitting him diagonally from collar to hip. The Mafia students watched with wide eyes, their mouths hanging open. I've never seen him fight like this. He has a melee weapon art. Even Edrin, through the pain of his broken ribs, couldn't look away. Each strike just one, that's all he needs. Damian moved through the gang members like death itself. Sonic blink, appear, strike, kill, sonic blink, repeat. His axe sang its whistling song with each swing. A man raised a sword to block. The axe went through the sword, through his arms, through his chest. He fell in pieces. Another tried to run. Sonic blink. Damian appeared in front of him. The terrified gang member raised his hands. Wait, please, I'll. The axe took him through the skull, splitting his head like a melon. 10 seconds. 10 bodies. 10 strikes. Not a single wasted movement. Damian stood in the center of a growing circle of corpses, blood dripping from every inch of his body and weapon. His breathing was steady, calm, like he'd just taken a casual walk. The remaining gang members were backing away now, their faces pale with terror. Monster. He's a fucking monster. Kale's face had gone from confident to genuinely shaken. Marco, do something. The wall, Marco Chen, had been watching from his position near the headquarters. His golden shields were still up, layered thick around his position. He's fast, I'll give him that, but speed means nothing if you can't break through my defense. He slammed his hands together. The golden aura shields multiplied, creating a dome around the remaining gang members. Get inside the barrier, now. The survivors scrambled to obey, rushing for the safety of Marco's shields. But Damian was already moving. Sonic blink. He appeared right at the shield's edge, just as a gang member was trying to squeeze through. His axe came up in a brutal uppercut swing. The blade caught the man under the chin and didn't stop until it exited through the top of his skull. The body jerked once and went still. Damian kicked it aside and looked at the golden barrier. His smile never wavered. Interesting. He tapped his axe against the shield. Tink, tink. The sound was almost playful. Inside the barrier, 20 gang members huddled together, their eyes wide with fear. Kale forced confidence into his voice. You can't touch us in here, kid. Marco's shields are impenetrable. You're just wasting your... Damian raised his axe high overhead. Dark crimson aura exploded around the weapon, so dense it looked almost black. The air itself seemed to distort around the blade. Let's test that. He brought the axe down with everything he had. Boom! The impact sounded like a bomb going off. The golden shield cracked. Actually cracked. Marco's eyes went wide. Impossible. No E-rank should be able to. Boom! Another strike, the crack widened. He's a D rank, you idiot, Marco breathed. Just look at that damn pressure. Boom! Third strike. The shield shattered like glass. Golden aura fragments rained down, dissolving into nothing. The gang members inside screamed. Damian stepped through the broken barrier, his axe resting casually on his shoulder. Run! No one moved as they were too terrified. Damian's smile grew wider. I said run, it's more fun that way. They ran, scattered in every direction like rats fleeing a sinking ship. Damian watched them go for exactly 3 seconds. Then he moved. He appeared in front of the slowest runner. The axe whistled. The man's torso separated from his legs. Another position, another runner. This strike took the target at the neck, clean decapitation. Sonic blink, sonic blink, sonic blink. It wasn't a battle anymore. It was a hunt. And Damian was enjoying every second of it. His movements were almost artistic in their brutality, each strike perfectly placed, each kill instant. The Mafia students watched in horrified fascination. He's smiling, Lysa whispered. He's actually smiling while he does it. Ronan collapsed against a wall, clutching his broken ribs, couldn't look away. Boss is different when he fights. Different, Xavier's voice shook. He's fucking terrifying. But despite the fear, despite the horror of watching Damian butcher people with casual ease, they felt safer than they'd felt all night. Because this monster was their monster. 15 more bodies fell in the span of 30 seconds. Damian's sonic blink made him impossible to predict, impossible to defend against. By the time you saw him, you were already dead. Finally, only 3 people remained standing. Kale, Marco, and one random gang member too paralyzed with fear to run. Damian appeared in front of the terrified grunt. The man pissed himself. Please, please, I have a family, I. The axe took his head. It rolled to a stop at Kale's feet. Now just 2. Marco's hands were shaking as he formed another shield barrier. Kale, we need to retreat. This kid is insane. Call for backup from. Shut up. Kale's aura exploded outward, purple and violent. His face was twisted with rage and humiliation. I'm not running from some fucking student. I've killed men twice his size. I've been doing this for 10 years. He cracked his knuckles, purple aura condensing around his fists until they looked like solid weapons. Come on then, you little shit. Let's see how tough you are when someone actually fights back. Damian's smile finally faded. His expression went cold, dead. You talk too much. He started walking forward, slow, deliberate. Not sonic blink, just walking. His axe dragged along the ground behind him, the blade scraping across pavement with a terrible grinding sound. His dark crimson aura built with each step, growing thicker, heavier. The very air seemed to vibrate. Kale charged, his aura-coated fist aimed straight for Damian's face. Die! Damian didn't dodge. He raised his axe with both hands, channeling every drop of aura he could muster into the weapon. The blade pulsed and glowed. Abyssal slaughter weapon art activated with full intent, and that old man who taught him had said, he must believe he only needs one strike and not prepare for another in his mind. One strike, that's all I need, I believe it, I know it. His intent was absolute, no room for doubt. The axe came down. Kale's punch came up. They met. Boom! The shockwave flattened everything within 10 feet. Windows shattered, the ground cracked. For one frozen moment, nothing moved. Then Kale's aura shattered like glass. The axe continued through his fist, through his arm, through his shoulder, through his torso, diagonally from right shoulder to left hip. The blade exited cleanly. Thud, thud, thud. Damian kept walking as the sound of his shoes hitting the ground responded throughout the streets. Slow steps but heavy steps, one after the other. Behind him, Kale stood perfectly still. He blinked and looked down. Blood started seeping through his shirt. A thin red line appeared across his torso, following the axe's path. What? Damian didn't look back. You were already dead, you just didn't know it yet. He took 3 more steps. Behind him, Kale's upper body slowly slid sideways. Then fell. The 2 halves of his corpse hit the ground with wet thuds. Blood pooled rapidly. Complete silence. Marco stared at Kale's bisected corpse, his face white as paper. The Mafia students stared too, unable to process what they'd just witnessed. Damian finally stopped walking. He turned to face Marco, his axe resting on his shoulder, blood dripping steadily from the blade. You're next. Marco's golden shields flickered and died. His hands dropped to his sides, trembling visibly. Behind those shields, he'd felt invincible for years. Now they felt like paper walls against a hurricane. Wait, just wait, please. His voice cracked with desperation. Damian kept walking toward him, his axe dragging across the blood-soaked pavement with that horrible grinding sound. We surrender. I surrender, my men surrender, just tell me why. Marco's knees gave out. He collapsed, hands raised in submission. Why the hell are you even attacking us? We never touched any academy students. We don't operate near the campus. What did we do to deserve this? Damian stopped a few feet away. His crimson eyes, cold and emotionless, stared down at the broken gang leader. Your gang runs drugs, extorts businesses, preys on people too weak to fight back. He lifted his axe, resting it against his shoulder. That's reason enough. But we're not the only ones. Half the outer region does the same thing. Why target us specifically? Marco's voice was desperate, confused, terrified. Everyone has to start somewhere. Damian's tone was casual, like he was discussing the weather. I needed a territory to claim. You had one, simple as that. He tilted his head slightly. But you asked a good question. Why are you specifically getting destroyed tonight? Want the honest answer. Marco nodded frantically. You run drugs. I hate that business more than anything else in this world. Damian's voice went colder. Alcohol, cigarettes, gambling. Those I can tolerate. People make their own choices with those, but drugs. The drug business is run by forcing people to become addicted to poison, turning them into slaves. Destroy families as it ruins their lives. His grip tightened on the axe handle. I watched what drugs did to people in I've seen what it does. So any organization under my control will never, ever touch that poison. Marco swallowed hard. If I stop the drug operations, if we shut it all down right now, will you let us live? Damian studied him for a long moment. Then he lowered his axe. Gather everyone who's still breathing. Bring them to your headquarters. We're going to have a conversation about how things work now. Relief flooded Marco's face. Thank you, I swear we'll. Don't thank me yet. You might not like what comes next. 20 minutes later, the surviving Serpent gang members were gathered inside their headquarters, a rundown 3-story building that reeked of cigarettes and desperation. 63 gang members remained alive out of the original 100+. They stood in nervous clusters, eyeing the blood-soaked students who'd somehow beaten them. The Mafia members were in rough shape, injuries wrapped in makeshift bandages, faces pale from blood loss and exhaustion, but they stood. Edrin leaned against Ronan for support, his ribs screaming with every breath. Lysa's hand still trembled as she clutched her bow. Xavier looked like he might throw up again any second, but he gripped his spear tightly. Ariana stayed close to Damian, her calm expression never wavering despite everything. Damian stood at the front of the room, his axe planted on the ground in front of him, both hands resting on the top of the handle. Blood still dripped from his hair and clothes. He looked like death incarnate. Listen carefully, because I'm only saying this once. His voice cut through the nervous murmuring. Complete silence fell. As of tonight, the Serpent Gang no longer exists. This territory now belongs to the Mafia. You all work for me now. Angry mutters started. Why the fuck would we? You work for me or you die. Those are your options. Damian's tone didn't change at all, still perfectly calm. I just killed your strongest fighters like they were nothing. Do you really think the rest of you stand a chance? The muttering stopped. Good, now that we understand each other, here are the new rules. Break them and I'll kill you myself. He held up one finger. First, the drug business ends tonight, completely. No exceptions, no phasing out, no just this one last shipment. It stops now. He pointed toward a corner of the room, where dozens of crates were stacked. Marco, those crates full of product, bring them outside. Marco hesitated. Boss, that's worth millions. We can't just... Damian's eyes narrowed. Did I stutter? Marco flinched and immediately started barking orders. Several gang members reluctantly, began hauling the crates out to the street. Second rule. Damian held up another finger. You will collect protection money from businesses in this territory, but it changes now. No more fixed extortion amounts. You take a share of their profits, 5% for small businesses, 10% for larger ones, scaled based on what they can actually afford. Confused looks spread through the crowd. One gang member, braver than the rest, spoke up. That's way less than we were taking before. How are we supposed to make money? You make money by protecting more businesses and helping them succeed. When they profit, you profit. Simple. And you all don't realize it. By following this approach, you make them richer, which in turn will make us richer. Think long-term instead of short-term is all I will say. Damian's voice was matter-of-fact. Any business that pays protection money becomes untouchable. No robberies, no assaults, no vandalism. You guard them like they're your own family. But, which brings me to the third rule, no crimes in our territory at all. Dead silence. You protect the people here. That means no muggings, no assaults, no rapes, no theft. Nothing. This territory becomes the safest place in the outer region. That's insane, someone shouted. We're criminals, that's what we do. You were criminals. Damian's voice cut like a blade. Now you're soldiers in my organization, and my soldiers don't prey on civilians. They protect them. He let that sink in. Fourth rule, we're opening an orphanage for street kids, runaways, anyone who needs it. You'll fund it from the protection money and run it properly. Feed them, clothe them, keep them safe. More confused looks. Marco spoke up carefully. Why would we do that? Because I said so, and because those kids are potential recruits. Treat them well, give them a future, and they'll be loyal to the Mafia for life. Damian's expression was calculating. But even he didn't know that he was just making excuses to make sure no child suffered hunger. Plus, it makes the civilians like us. Easier to operate when people see us as protectors instead of parasites. Several gang members nodded slowly, starting to understand the logic. Fifth rule, we're expanding. The entire outer region will belong to the Mafia within 6 months. Every other gang either joins us or dies. No exceptions. That's a war, Marco said quietly. A big one. I know, start preparing for it. Damian pulled his axe from the ground and pointed it at the assembled gang members. Sixth rule, get stronger, all of you. Train your aura, practice your skills, improve your combat abilities. I will be coming here sometimes to train you. Anyone who doesn't keep up gets kicked out. His eyes swept across every face. I don't need dead weight. I need soldiers who can fight. Seventh and final rule. His voice dropped, becoming absolutely cold. No sexual assault, no human trafficking, no kidnapping. If you can't control yourself, just go hire a prostitute or find a lover. If I find out anyone under my command is doing any of that. He paused, letting the silence stretch. I will personally hunt you down and make what happened to Kale look merciful. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. I will cut you apart so slowly you'll beg for death, and I won't give it to you for hours. Nobody doubted he meant every word. Boss is so good. Many female students looked at Damian with shining eyes as they heard him give protection to women. These rules are non-negotiable. Follow them and you'll be protected, paid, and given opportunities to rise. Break them and you die. Understand? Murmurs of acknowledgement. I said, do you understand? Yes, sir. The shout was unified, loud, almost military. Damian nodded. Good, now get those drug crates outside. In the street, 63 crates of various drugs were piled high. Cocaine, heroin, methamphetamine, pills of every color. Millions of dollars worth of product. The gang members looked physically pained, watching their fortune get stacked up. Damian walked to the pile, pulled out a lighter, and tossed it onto the nearest crate. The flames caught immediately, spreading rapidly from crate to crate. The drugs began to burn, sending acrid smoke into the night sky. "That's our money," someone wailed. "That was your money." Damian watched the flames with satisfaction. Your new money comes from protection fees, and eventually the nightclubs were going to take over. Clean money, sustainable money. Marco stood beside him, watching his former fortune burn. "You're really serious about all this?" "Completely. And if we betray you?" Damian glanced at him. "You saw what I did to Kale. Do you really want to find out what I'd do to someone who betrayed me?" Marco shook his head quickly. "No, sir, definitely not." "Smart man." The Mafia students watched the bonfire in various states of shock and exhaustion. Edrin limped over to Damian's side. "Boss, did you plan all of this from the start? Everything that you said to them?" "Most of it." Damian's eyes never left the flames. "I needed you all to see real combat, to understand what it means to fight people who actually want to kill you, and I needed a territory to start building from. Two birds, one stone." "Exactly." Ronan joined them, one arm wrapped around his broken ribs. "Boss, where'd you learn to fight like that, with the axe?" "An old man taught me. I selected two weapon arts from the start. One is abyssal slaughter and the other is omega point." Damian's tone made it clear that was all he'd say on the subject. Lysa approached as well, her face still pale. "I killed people tonight, multiple people. I can still see their faces when I close my eyes." "Good." She looked shocked. "Good? How is that good?" "It means you're still human. The day you stop seeing their faces is the day you should worry." Damian finally turned to look at his Mafia members. "You all did well tonight. Better than I expected for your first real operation. Let's head back to the academy soon. You all need medical attention. Also, take account of the money the gang had, and also take some armored vehicles for our use. It feels too weird to travel in buses to commit crime." Everyone laughed as they heard that. Xavier raised a shaky hand. "Boss, can I ask something?" "Go ahead." "Why am I so good at killing people when I'm terrified?" Several students laughed despite themselves. Even Damian's lips twitched slightly. "Shouldn't I be the one asking you that?" He clapped Xavier on the shoulder. "You did fine, Xav. Never expected to see this side of yours. I think I'm gonna have nightmares forever." "Probably get used to it." "You guys, stop talking and help me carry the fainted ones." The drugs continued burning behind them, the smoke visible for miles. Tomorrow, word would spread through the outer region. The Serpent Gang had fallen. The Mafia had arrived. And the game had changed. While Damian and the Mafia were fighting for their lives in the bloody underworld of Tranquil City, the noble faction of the first year had a gathering as well. Inside a lavish room in the core region, crystal chandeliers hung from the ceiling and expensive wine flowed freely. Life was really completely different for people living in the same reality. All the students studied in the same academy. All of them were excellent talents picked from the top of the entire Federation. And yet the Mafia faction was putting their lives on the line just to earn money and claim territory, while the noble faction was casually spending thousands of Federation coins on a single dinner discussion. So how could the ideologies of the two sides not be completely conflicting? This was just one example among countless others. Have we figured out how strong that guy is now that 2 months have passed? Leonard spoke to Mitchell, who sat at the head of the long table like some kind of young lord presiding over his court. All of them had gathered here tonight to discuss their plans for their batch, and see if they could gain any advantages or benefits from the commoners, like their seniors had successfully done for years. The table seated about 10 people total. Michiel Thorne at the head, then Iris Langston, Leonard Ashford, Ralph Eddington, Ruby Frey, Simon DeSirian, Quinn Zander, Fiona Sigurd, Victoria White, and lastly, Adrian Murdoch. Yes, Adrian Murdoch still moved freely within the circles of the noble faction. Almost no one knew that he secretly kept in contact with Damian and fed him information. Not even his own sister knew about his divided loyalties. As to what these two were actually planning together, only time would tell. Adrian had also been the one selected to join the student council after Damian left, since he was the strongest student besides Michiel himself. I don't know about you guys, but my subordinates couldn't find any useful information at all. Those commoners who are part of the Mafia never let any news slip, no matter what we tried. Instead of Michiel, it was Iris Langston who spoke first, the 5th-ranked first year and another SS-ranked talent. Her voice carried frustration. And mind you, they used every means possible to get information. Threats, bribes, everything, still nothing. Their lower-ranked members, usually, don't even know anything worth reporting anyway. Simon DeSirian, the 6th-ranked student, spoke from her side. He was a tall guy with black hair and eyes, though his hair was styled in aggressive spikes that made him look perpetually annoyed. What the hell does this Mafia even do all day? I haven't heard anything about them other than the fact they keep an eye on every single commoner we try to recruit. Ralph Eddington spoke with clear irritation in his voice. He'd been ranked 10th when he first joined the academy, but Damian had pushed him down to 11th. His rank had fallen even further since then, now sitting at a humiliating 13th place. Tell me about it. I had to give so many extra benefits and resources just to make those commoners join me and become my subordinates. A frustrated-looking guy with brown hair and eyes spoke up, hatred visible in his expression. All because of these sons of bitches in the Mafia. He was Quinn Zander, currently the 11th-ranked student. He was one of the few who'd been directly pressured and threatened by Mafia members when he tried to force a talented commoner to become his subordinate. The experience had left him bitter. You're just stingy, Quinn. So what if we have to pay more resources than before? At the end of the day, the majority will still end up as our subordinates eventually. Ruby Frey spoke casually, while drinking her wine with terrible table manners. She was ranked 7th and had distinctive dark pink hair and matching pink eyes. She was the most carefree among them, treating everything like a game. Anyways, it's only during our 2nd year when we'll actually need these pawns for the battlefield expeditions. We have plenty of time to build up our forces. Is there really no information at all, Michiel? The student council doesn't have access to anything either. Fiona Sigurd spoke up, her tone sharp and analytical. She was a strict-looking girl with black hair and eyes who wore glasses, currently ranked 12th in their year. Adrian Murdoch and Victoria White sat at the far end of the table, largely ignored by the others. Both of them were engaged in their own quiet conversation, paying minimal attention to the political discussion happening around them. Victoria White was the 14th-ranked student and the least interested in these power struggles among all of them. She was focused on the path of becoming a healer and doctor, not a politician. She had pure white hair and matching white eyes. Her noble house was a subordinate family to the Murdoch imperial family, so she'd known Adrian since childhood and trusted him completely. All of the people present at this table represented the best talents the noble families had produced this year at Stormhold Academy. Every single one of them was S rank or above. Damian's detailed information is not accessible through normal channels due to Gia's direct intervention. Michiel replied calmly, his tone absolutely confident. He'd changed dramatically over the past 2 months, grown into his role as the leader of the noble faction. Gone was any trace of the fear he'd once felt toward Damian after that first confrontation. Time really did make people forget after all. The terror that Damian had inspired had faded significantly in the hearts of these talented students. It wasn't just arrogance on their part, either. Mitchell was already at E+ rank and about to break through to D- rank any day now. The others were also catching up rapidly to the top rankings. If I knew what his current rank was for certain, I would have challenged him already and taken back the top spot. Mitchell continued, cutting his expensive steak with perfect etiquette. But I won't make the mistake of underestimating that guy again. If even Gia is personally hiding his detailed information, then there's definitely something wrong with his earlier talent assessment. He can't possibly be just a B-rank talent like the initial reports said. Silence fell across the table as everyone adopted thoughtful, pondering expressions. Gia was the main consciousness of admin AI, and for it to take direct action protecting a student's information meant that Damian was genuinely special somehow. But don't worry too much about it. I'll take action as soon as I reach D rank and challenge him properly. Mitchell's confidence was absolute. Our seniors are also pressuring us pretty hard, since we haven't been able to help them recruit subordinates from the new students like previous years. We need to show results soon. He finished speaking and returned to eating his food with elegant, practiced movements. Adrian, who had been mostly silent throughout the entire conversation, spoke up suddenly in a casual, almost teasing voice. I would strongly advise you to at least reach D+ rank before even thinking about challenging that guy, Mitchell. Everyone turned to look at him with varying expressions of surprise. He was already at E+ rank 2 months ago, and now that all this time has passed with him training constantly, I honestly wouldn't be surprised if he's already broken through to D- rank or even higher. Leonard's face twisted with annoyance. You're thinking way too highly of that commoner's talent, Adrian. Even if he somehow has the same high-rank talent as us, it would still be incredibly difficult for him to advance that quickly without proper resources and guidance. Exactly, Iris agreed, her tone dismissive. We have access to the best skills, the best weapon arts, personal instructors, expensive supplements that boost aura growth. What does he have? Some scraps from sympathetic professors. She laughed lightly. There's no way he's keeping pace with us. It's mathematically impossible. Ralph nodded enthusiastically. Adrian, I think you're being way too paranoid. That guy got lucky during the recruitment day incident. He caught Mara off guard with a cheap trick using the aura jamming device. That's all it was. And Gareth proved it, Quinn added with satisfaction in his voice. He beat Damian down like a dog in front of everyone, showed him his real place. I bet that commoner is still recovering from the humiliation. Simon leaned back in his chair. 2 months isn't nearly enough time to close the gap between our resources and his. He's probably still stuck at E+ rank, struggling to break through while we're all advancing steadily. Ruby giggled, clearly tipsy from the wine. Maybe he gave up entirely. Maybe that's why nobody sees him around campus anymore. He realized he can't compete and ran away to hide Tilda. Only Fiona looked thoughtful, her analytical mind working. Adrian does have a point about not underestimating unknowns, but statistically speaking, rapid advancement without proper resources is highly unlikely. The numbers don't support it. Mitchell raised his hand slightly, and everyone fell silent. Adrian, I appreciate your caution. Really, I do. But you're giving that guy way too much credit. His smile was confident, bordering on smug. I've been training under my family's personal combat instructor. I have access to SS rank weapon arts. I consume aura supplements worth thousands of coins daily. My progress is guaranteed and measurable. He took a sip of wine. What does Damian have? Determination, anger. Those things don't beat systematic advantages built over generations. Adrian said nothing, just smiled slightly and returned to his conversation with Victoria. But inside, he was thinking about what he'd witnessed in the garden that night. About Damian's cold, calculating eyes, his manipulative planning, his complete lack of hesitation or moral restraint. You fools have no idea what kind of monster you're dismissing. The dinner continued with the noble faction's confidence growing with each passing minute. They truly believed the gap between them and the commoners was widening, that their systematic advantages would inevitably lead to total dominance. They had no idea that at this very moment, the weak commoner they were dismissing was standing in a blood-soaked street, surrounded by corpses, having just conquered his first territory. They had no idea the game had already changed. And by the time they figured it out, it would be far too late. Stormhold Academy, outside the medical wing. Professor Richard Evergreen, head of the medical wing, and Dr. Isabel White stood together in the cool night air, discussing the day's work. It was late, well past midnight, and both of them were about to head home and get some much-needed rest. Even though they were powerful awakeners with bodies far beyond normal humans, their line of work usually left them mentally and physically exhausted. I'm genuinely glad the Academy seems to have settled down after that whole gymnasium incident 2 months ago. Richard spoke as he stretched his back, hearing it crack. Previously, I honestly thought that Damian Fellow would lead those commoners to fight with the nobles on a daily basis. Constant injuries, constant drama, constant overtime for us. But it seems I was overthinking it. No extra work, no headaches, peace and quiet. He sighed in relief. For him, more student fights meant exponentially more work. It was always better when peace was maintained, even if it was boring. I wouldn't get my hopes too high just yet, Richard. Isabel replied, her white eyes scanning the distant campus grounds out of habit. That kid has probably just been training heavily in isolation since that day. He was beaten up quite badly by Gareth, after all. Though I have heard through my little sister that the organization he established has actually been keeping a strange balance among the first years. It's honestly my first time seeing a situation where a single batch had two equally strong factions like this. Richard nodded thoughtfully. Well, I wonder how long that Mafia of his can realistically last, though. They have absolutely no official funding or institutional resources backing them. The noble faction, on the other hand, has access to family wealth, expensive supplements, rare skills and weapon arts passed down through generations. They'll progress much faster. It won't be long before we see them challenging the Mafia's influence and crushing them. It's good to be young and idealistic, I suppose. He sighed again, this time with a touch of nostalgia. All the professors had been quietly curious and interested in these political developments over the past 2 months. Things had been getting quite predictable and boring around campus lately. What's that? Isabel suddenly spoke, her voice carrying confusion as she looked toward the main road leading to campus. Richard followed her gaze, and his eyes widened slightly. 6 armored trucks were approaching the academy gates at high speed. Not the cheap civilian kind. Military-grade armored transport vehicles, black and imposing, with reinforced plating that could withstand serious attacks. Their drivers definitely weren't students, but Richard, with his S-rank awake in eyesight, could clearly see all the passengers sitting inside the trucks through the reinforced windows. His expression went from curious to resigned in seconds. I'll be damned, looks like we jinxed it hard. Richard spoke in a completely helpless voice. It's all the Mafia students, and from what I can see, almost every single one of them is injured to some degree, some seriously. This meant they would absolutely be working overtime tonight. Sigh. Isabel sighed deeply and immediately called into the medical wing through her communication device. All staff, we have incoming mass casualties. Get the stretchers ready, prepare the emergency treatment rooms, and have the aura healing pods on standby. Move quickly. The 6 armored trucks rolled to a smooth stop directly in front of the medical wing entrance, their engines rumbling before shutting off in sequence. The rear doors of the lead truck opened with a heavy metallic thunk. Damian stepped out first. He was completely covered in blood from head to toe. His crimson hair was matted with it, his clothes were soaked, and his hands were stained dark red. Even his face had dried blood splattered across it in a grotesque pattern. But he moved with perfect composure, not a single injury visible on his body. Behind him, the other Mafia members began emerging from the trucks. Edrin needed help getting out, one arm wrapped protectively around his broken ribs. Lysa was pale as death, her hands still trembling. Ronan limped heavily, his knee badly swollen. Xavier looked like he might faint or vomit at any moment. Student after student emerged, all bearing various injuries. Cuts, bruises, broken bones, burns from aura clashes, blood everywhere. But they were all alive. Every single one. The medical staff rushed forward with stretchers and emergency equipment, their professional training kicking in immediately despite the shocking scene. Damian's eyes found Dr. Isabel standing near the entrance. He recognized her instantly as the one who'd previously treated him after his body training collapse. He walked toward her calmly, his blood-soaked appearance not seeming to bother him at all. Dr. Isabel. His voice was polite, respectful even. I'm afraid we're going to need your help tonight. After making sure Ariana was settled and helping coordinate the other injured students with the medical staff, Damian excused himself. He climbed the stairs to the roof of the medical wing building, seeking solitude and quiet. He liked spending time alone in silence, practicing his breathing technique and letting his mind process everything. It was an extremely cloudy night. No stars were visible in the sky at all, everything hidden behind thick, dark clouds. Strong winds blew constantly, and Damian's long crimson hair broke free from the temporary knot he'd tied earlier, whipping around his face. As he stood there near the roof's edge, letting the wind wash over him, he heard gentle footsteps approaching from behind. A green-haired, green-eyed middle-aged man, wearing a white medical coat, walked toward him with a gentle, practiced smile on his face. An evergreen. Looking at that distinctive green hair color, which was quite unique and specific to that particular imperial family's bloodline, Damian immediately came to that conclusion. Hello, Damian. The man's voice was warm, friendly. I'm Professor Richard Evergreen, head of the medical wing and also the homeroom teacher for the 4th year's section. A pleasure to finally meet you properly. Richard smiled as he introduced himself, coming to stand beside Damian near the roof's edge. It's nice to meet you as well, Professor. Damian turned to face him and bowed slightly, showing genuine gratitude. Thank you for taking care of my friends downstairs. I really appreciate it. Don't worry about it at all. It's literally our job to look after students when they get injured. That's what we're here for. Richard waved off the thanks casually. Though I did come up here to check on you personally as well. Your entire body is completely covered in blood, after all. Should probably make sure you're not hiding any serious injuries under all that. His experienced eyes scanned Damian's figure from head to toe, looking for signs of wounds. It's not mine, no need to worry about me. Damian shrugged, his tone utterly casual. Richard became genuinely stunned for a moment, then looked at Damian much more closely to confirm. Not a single visible injury, not even a scratch. All that blood belonged to other people. Sighed, care for a cigar. Richard sighed heavily and pulled out 2 expensive cigars from his coat pocket, handing one to Damian before he could refuse. "Thanks." Damian didn't refuse the offer. It had been quite a tiring day for him as well, despite how easy it might have looked when he was systematically shooting down enemies one by one from his rooftop position. It was actually incredibly hard and mentally taxing work. He'd had to constantly pay attention to the entire chaotic battlefield, tracking dozens of moving targets simultaneously, calculating trajectories, prioritizing threats, and keeping a vigilant eye on every single Mafia member to make absolutely sure none of them died. Even with his abnormally strong willpower stat, he was genuinely exhausted. The 2 of them just stood there in companionable silence, looking up at the cloudy sky as they smoked their cigars. Rumble. The wind was becoming even stronger, and the clouds were starting to make ominous thundering sounds. A storm was definitely coming. "There's actually one more reason I came up here to find you specifically." Richard spoke again after several minutes of silence. "I also wanted to see closely for myself the disciple personally taken in by the headmaster. You're quite the topic of conversation among the faculty." They Damian put on a genuinely confused expression, turning to look at Richard. "Ah, I see. You don't even know yet, do you?" Richard smiled at Damian's obvious confusion. "Actually, there's only one person in the entire Federation who can properly teach the abyssal slaughter weapon art to anyone, and that person is the headmaster of our academy. You must have met him by now if you're learning that art." "You mean that weird old man with the strange fetish for collecting heads?" Damian's face showed understanding dawning. "Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and like the video and comment down if anything wrong in the story, and if have any suggestion to a new novel or want next part of any series, comment down. Our target is to get 1K subscriber. There will be SUPRISC for all of you. Stay tuned.